In 2025, a re-elected President Donald Trump would round up undocumented people already in the United States on a vast scale and detain them in sprawling camps while they wait to be expelled. He would reassign federal agents, local police officers, and National Guard soldiers to scour the country for unauthorized immigrants and deport people by the millions every year. That is the vision outlined by Trump advisors, including Stephen Miller, to the New York Times last weekend. But we might not have to wait until 2025 to see at least part of that plan in action. As we speak, Texas is on the verge of testing out one part of the Trump 2025 immigration plan. On Tuesday, in a challenge to the federal government, Texas lawmakers passed a bill that would allow local police officers without training to arrest undocumented migrants. The state would deputize officers hundreds of miles away from the border to make these arrests. The bill would also allow local judges to deport those migrants without due process. Critics say the bill could lead to racial profiling and the wrongful arrests of U.S. citizens, but it is now awaiting the signature of Texas Governor Greg Abbott. And this weekend, Governor Abbott will be at the border with Donald Trump, the man who wants to implement these policies nationwide. Joining me now is Quentin Fulks, Principal Deputy Campaign Manager for President Biden's re-election campaign. Quentin, thank you for being here tonight. I know the Biden campaign has thoughts on some of the Trump policies that have been alluded to. I'll read a quote from one of the Biden campaign press releases today. Building massive detention camps by defunding our military to imprison people living in America is not only un-American, it will actively make us less safe. Donald Trump isn't just echoing the words of Hitler and Mussolini by saying he will root out vermin from within. He's planning real action to follow in their footsteps. Does the Biden campaign feel that Donald Trump is on the level of Hitler and Mussolini?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Alex, thank you for having me on the show. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. We've had 4 years to see Donald Trump drive our country to the brink of destruction on foreign policy, domestic policy, and now his campaign is clearly outlining what he would do if he were to regain power in 2025. You know, he's talking about ending birthright citizenships, mass detention centers by using the military to round up American citizens in some cases, you know, putting children in cages. You know, this is not who we are. And so absolutely, Donald Trump has proven that he's on the level of Hitler and Mussolini by his actions. And again, his campaign is now doubling down, saying that he would do the same things over again if he were reelected president of the United States. And so, you know, the proof is in the pudding here. And we Americans need to believe Donald Trump when he says he would do these things, because unfortunately, he's already been given an opportunity to do them before. And we have to do everything in our power to make sure that he does not get back in the White House to try to do it again.
How central is this message on immigration going to be to President Biden's reelection campaign? And how concerned are you about some of the polls that show some waning support for the president among the Latino population in the United States?
Look, at the end of the day, elections are a choice. Our campaign has been routinely pushing back on this narrative around polling, showing that at the end of the day, when there's a choice, American voters are turning out to vote for the Democratic agenda under President Biden's leadership. We've seen it in the 2022 midterms. We saw it, you know, a week and a day ago on Tuesday, or a week and 2 days ago on Tuesday, when Americans voted, winning races in Kentucky, closing the gap in terms of Republicans and Democrats in states like Mississippi and Ohio legalizing abortion. And so, again, our focus is on making sure we're doing everything we can right now to build a foundation to where we're going to be able to have the most successful campaign heading into 2024. And when it comes to this immigration message, again, this election is a choice, and Donald Trump is showing that he is planning to put in place a divisive, hateful, and harmful agenda for America by calling for a Muslim ban, saying he wants to round people up. These are human beings that we're talking about. This is not leadership. This is not the way you govern. This is the ego of one person who is completely out of touch, who is completely extreme, who is searching for relevance again. And our campaign is going to be focused every single day on making sure we don't let him do that.
I want to ask about the narrative, the messaging, the pushing back. There's a story that we were covering yesterday about Univision and how the channel, the network, the most widely watched Spanish language channel in the United States, is increasingly turning its favor towards Donald Trump. It reportedly canceled Biden ads that were supposed to be running during its interview with Donald Trump. It canceled an interview with the Biden spokesperson that was supposed to run after this interview with Donald Trump. When it comes to getting the Biden message out in this critical year ahead, are you concerned by the actions of a place like Univision?
Look, Univision is a platform that reaches a lot of voters. Who care deeply about the issues that we want to put in front of them. And so we're going to continue to have conversations and make sure that we can resolve any issues that we have with them. That's not something that, I want to litigate out in the press. So we're going to handle that in the manner that it needs to be handled. When it comes to reaching voters, we're living in a very fractured media environment. It's a different media environment that existed in 2020. It's a different media environment that existed in 2022. And it's going to be ever changing as we head into 2024. And so our campaign right now from the start has been very diligent about investing in testing across the states that we know we need to win in 2024 in order to get Joe Biden and Kamala Harris reelected. And so finding the best messages, finding where we can reach the most voters so that when we get into next year, we're able to maximize our effectiveness at reaching voters. And this is something, by the way, that the Republican Party, no other party right now is doing and working on. And this is not something that you're just going to be able to parachute or balloon into 2024 and think that you're going to reach voters in the media environment. But our campaign is going to keep our head down, continue to do the work to make sure that we're using every platform and media outlet available to reach voters where they are and deliver the message that Joe Biden is working on an agenda to lower costs for American families, to keep America safe, in stark contrast with the Republican Party, who is hell-bent on continuing to rip away a woman's right to choose, and giving tax breaks to big pharma and the wealthiest among us. And so that's where our focus is, and that's how we're going to continue to proceed into next year.
And I know you folks have been reaching out, especially to communities of color, specifically black voters in this country, Latino voters in this country. That's part of an early initiative that we've heard reporting on. I got to ask about the president's support among black voters. 22% of black voters, this is according to polling that I know, and we're not supposed to be relying too much on it, but it is a snapshot of the American public at this moment in time. 22% of black voters in 6 swing states choose Trump over Biden. Kamala Harris performs better than Joe Biden in a head-to-head matchup against Trump, due in large part to her support among voters who are either non-white or under 30. Can you talk about that? Why is that? And what is Kamala Harris's role in the president's reelection strategy?
Look, this is the Biden-Harris reelection campaign. They ran together as a ticket, and that's how we're running this time around. So we're not going to get caught up in any sort of traps to try to separate the president and the vice president. That's not happening. The agenda that has been ran and successfully accomplished for the American people and all the things that the president has done, the vice president has been by his side, and we're going to message those. And that includes, creating nearly 14 million jobs, $7 billion to HBCUs, 800,000 manufacturing jobs, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month, putting more black women in the federal judiciary than any other administration, all other administrations combined. And so that's where our focus is. When it comes to black voters, I've routinely said that black voters are not monolithic. This is not an audience that we take for granted whatsoever. It's also not an audience that we believe we're just going to be able to parachute in their communities next year around September and October and just say, if you turn out to vote, that you're going to vote for us. We know we have to earn the support of this community, and we're keeping our head down and doing that every single day, which is why we've come in and started treating both black voters, Latino voters, AAPI voters as persuadable targets that we know we need to have sustained conversations with over the course of the next year to make sure that they turn out to vote and that they turn out to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And again, this election is going to be a choice. And when the choice is put in front of these voters, we've seen time and time again, in spite of any polling that's come out, that they vote Democratic for an agenda that's being presided over by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.